do some pulp printing. So I'm going to demonstrate the entire process of how to get set up to do pulp printing. Pulp printing is kind of a stencil printing process where we use overbeaten fibers, overbeaten cotton fibers, to spray pulp through a silk screen or through a stencil, a sophisticated stencil. So the main kind of ingredient for the medium is actually pulp. And so we take a cotton t-shirt and we pulp it for about 5 hours in our machine, and it refines the pulp into a very, very thin, very fine consistency, and it's fine enough that it'll actually spray through the spray bottle, and it actually goes through a very coarse screen. And so here's a screen that we can use, and so I'm going to demonstrate how to create these screens, and then we're going to demonstrate actually how to render the images and spray the pulp through the screen. The tools that you will need to get started to make the screens are essentially some kind of frame. Here we have a Newman roller silkscreen frame. These are very useful. They're about $40 online if you want to find them. And this frame I will go through more thoroughly. Allows you to stretch and reuse the frame very easily. But you can actually just use a wooden canvas stretcher frame and then hand stretch the material with a staple gun very easily. In the end, I make so many of these that I was spending more money on staples than I was actually buying the frame. So I have these frames. This is a Newman roller. You need some kind of frame. You also need some kind of mesh material. And so nylon is the most common, but you can also use a window, like silk window screen or nylon window screen. In this case, it's actually a cotton kind of cheesecloth. This actually works fine as well. The more fine the weave, the more fine the image. So your mesh count, which is the weave count really, needs to be somewhere between 20 and 100, okay? So when you buy your silk screen or your nylon, if anything above 100, it's very difficult to get the pulp to go through, okay? So you need a frame to stretch your screen. You also need some kind of material that will be your screen. For the actual making of the burning of the screen, we're going to have a photographic emulsion that's made specifically for silkscreen material. I prefer the Ulano QTX. This is a textile emulsion. This will stick to plywood, it'll stick to brick, it'll stick to sheetrock, it'll stick to any kind of textile. This is by far the most superior textile emulsion on the market. So I would use the Ulano QTX emulsion. It's fairly expensive. It's about $40 for a quart. So this was about $120 for this gallon of it. You will also need some kind of tool to basically put the emulsion onto the stretch screen. This is basically a scoop tray. These are about $10 and you can buy them. I'll provide a link here on this YouTube page where you can actually go to and get this list and order the materials. You'll need some basic tools for stretching the screen, so a wrench, and here I have a ratchet wrench. You'll need some kind of spatula to clean out your screen. Let's see what else you need. We also need to have some kind of frame that basically, an old picture frame works really well. This is how we're going to do our contact print, okay, and I'm going to demonstrate that. So this is how we'll do our exposure for our photographic process. Also, a 500-watt halogen work lamp that you can get at any hardware store has them. So a 500-watt halogen work lamp, they're about $20 at a Lowe's or Home Depot, and we're going to have that be about 16 inches or so from our exposure plate. And so the last thing that we're going to need is some kind of hose. So it's a washout area. It could be your kitchen sink, it could be the hose that's behind your toilet, what have you. And basically some kind of panel or piece of wood that we're going to use to hold the frame, the screen, as we wash it out. And I'll demonstrate all that. So you do need some basic art materials to get started. The screen, the frame, the photographic emulsion, the scoop tray, and then some kind of picture frame. That's really the base for getting set up. The component that I will not really get into too much is how to render the pulp. You need to have a Hollander beater, and you need to beat the pulp super fine. So this varies based on every machine. So if you have a Valley versus a Rayna versus one of Lee McDonald's machines, your beating time is going to be different. And so I'm not going to demonstrate that today. It takes too long. But in our machine, it's about 4.5 to 5 hours of beating to get it super fine. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate how to stretch it. Okay, so the first step in making our pulp printing material is actually to stretch the screen. And so here we have this screen material. It's basically just some cotton cheesecloth. This is going to work completely fine. It's very coarse, so this will make a pretty coarse image, very unique. If you want something more sophisticated, you can get stretched, or you can get nylon from the art store, and you can basically stretch that if you want something a little more sophisticated. I don't mind crude, and so we're going to go that way. Here is the Newman roller, and so I've used my ratchet wrench to loosen these bolts. So there's 6 bolts here that basically you can loosen that allows you to move and pivot this. So if you have a Newman roller, this is going to work out really well for you. If you don't have a Newman roller, you can just stretch this over a canvas stretcher by hand and staple it. So I will now demonstrate how to stretch it with a Newman roller. You take out these little pieces here. So in the stretching process, you can see the disadvantage. One of the disadvantages of using this cheesecloth material is it's not very strong. So I actually tore it when I went to stretch it. But this is okay. It is not, we're not screen printing with this the way you would normally do. We're just using it as a stretcher. You don't really need it to be that tight. This is tight enough. So this tear mark does not really matter. It's definitely a little bit of a goof up, but it's okay. And the next step we want to do is we need to clean or degrease the surface, because our photographic emulsion will not stick to any grease. And since this cheesecloth we found on the street, as everything around here, we want to basically make sure that it doesn't have any grease on it. And so what I've done is I'm just using a normal what do you call this, dish soap. And so this is sufficient enough to take out the grease. So I'm going to scrub both sides of this, basically washing it. I'm getting rid of any of the grease. Scrub the front, and now I'm going to scrub the back. So degreasing is very important. If you don't degrease your screen, when you add your photographic emulsion, you'll probably get all sorts of fingerprints or different marks where the emulsion doesn't stick. And so now I'm just rinsing it out. And I got a lot of little fibers from that brush, but that's okay. Just kind of get rid of them. Rinsing both sides. And now I'm going to put it up next to a fan, and I will let it dry. so could pick off any little bits of futz that are on there. So we're going to let it dry for about an hour, and then we're going to coat it with the photographic emulsion. So now we've let our screen dry after degreasing it, and so it is ready to receive our photographic emulsion. So here you can see it's not super tight, and we've got this huge hole that's kind of from stretching it a little bit too tight, but that's okay. So I'm wearing gloves because we're going to use the photographic emulsion. By the order of the state of California, this material is carcinogenic, so it'll cause cancer. So we want to take the lid off, over here, and you can smell this stuff. It smells really funny. It smells a little bit like rubber, and it has like a pinkish color to it, right? And I'm going to pour some. I'm going to take my scoop tray. The scoop tray has two sides, or it should have two sides. It should have one that's a little bit thicker and one that's really thin. And you want to use the thin side to apply the photographic emulsion. So I'm going to pour my emulsion into the scoop tray. Okay. I've got my emulsion. I'm going to cover up or close up my big gallon jug here because it's light sensitive and this is kind of funky. There we go. And now I'm going to apply this. This takes some practice to get really good at. So your first time it's going to look awful. But I'm going to apply it by taking my scoop tray and kind of making sure the emulsion is even, and then tilting it into contact with the screen, and I'm going to drag it slowly up along the screen and then kind of back it off to allow the emulsion to go back into the scoop tray. There's my coat. And now I want to coat the whole thing. So this stuff's pretty forgiving. You can just kind of like almost draw with it. You can go over it more than once. Feel that it's necessary. Here I'm waiting for it to get even, and now I'm going to draw it over again. And so there I've coated my screen, and you can see that I left a line. This is actually completely perfect. You just need a light coat over the top of this, and if you have any threads, it's nice to kind of pull it off. So I'm going to go and put that in. So we have to let this dry for about at least a half hour. You know, maybe an hour. Best is to let it sit overnight and it really hardens. And we don't want it to be out in the studio light because you really only have maybe a half hour under just normal lights in the evening before it starts to fog. And so what you want to do is let these dry in a dark location. So here I've built like a little dark drying box with my screens in it. So I'll load it in, and then I just have some kind of black plastic covering, and then I let it sit. And so tomorrow morning I'll come in and I'll take that out, and then I'll cut the screen off of the frame, and then I'll load it into a bag so that we can use it as we need. Okay. So basically, to render our image, what we're going to do is create a solid black and white file. So it could be a line drawing, it could be a photograph, whatever, but you want to go into Photoshop or GIMP and you want to get rid of anything that's gray. So it has to be completely black or white. It's basically an open area on the screen or a closed area. So this is very important. And so here Chenga has created a design that essentially is just black and white, and she's going to output it or send it to this laser printer. So this only works with a laser printer. Okay, so we have printed out our positives. So we just printed printed onto, we laser printed onto standard office paper. This is normal 24-pound office paper. And so here we have a whole bunch of different positives that we've printed on it. And so the next step for us is to basically take some Johnson's baby oil, or you could use olive oil, you could use mayonnaise, you can use any kind of oil-based media. The baby oil is actually good for your hands, and it smells nice, so we will use it. So now I'm going to massage this into contact with the office paper. This will make the office paper translucent, which will enable us to use this as a positive. So in this way, we don't have to print our positive onto transparency, because you could print it on transparency, no problem. But this is a little bit less expensive, and it'll cost us less money. And so here again is our positive. I'm going to flip it over. It'll start to suck up some of that oil. So I coat the back of this, and I'm making it translucent. And so I will do this with all of the positives that we've made. Here's another one. I'm flipping it over. It's going to suck up some of that oil. Add a little bit more. And I'm making like a stack of positives that we can use. So when we're done with this, we have to wait until the sun goes down a little bit. It's a little bit bright out right now. And then we will do our exposures and washouts, and then we'll be able to use the screens. So you see I'm just coating these with the oil. And these are wonderful images. They're all just black and white. We only had one that had a little bit of gray in it, so we're going to revisit the design in Photoshop. And so this is the one that we're going to redo. It basically has some kind of gray field around it, so it needs to be reworked. But the rest of them look perfect. So this is photosensitive material. So you want to make sure that it's wrapped up and kept in a black storage bag. Here's like a contractor bag. These are not 100% photo resistant, I guess. So then inside I've got it wrapped again in another black bag. This is actually from like black and white photography film. So this is a lot more photo resistant, or light resistant. And you can see there's lots of holes in it and stuff. So I keep it in this box. Here's our material. It is photosensitive, so we are in the middle of the day here, but fortunately in Hamburg we never see the sun, and so we're overcast, and we have about 10 or 15 minutes using it in this kind of light before it gets fog. So what we're going to do is, you can see these are the pieces as they come off of the screen that we coated. So I'm going to take one of these, and I'm going to slide the rest back into the bag to protect them from the light. So we take one of our sensitized screens, and I put this all right back into the setup. We're going to use these throughout. So I'll put this over here. Now, out of the way. Okay. So now we're going to, essentially we have a frame, just a picture frame, nothing fancy at all, not even close to things. It's just a picture frame that I found in the dumpster. So the only thing that's kind of fancy about it is that it's not broken. And so here we have the back part. Inside I've got a little bit of a felt. This provides some cushion. And then what I want to do is put down, the first thing you do is you put down your positives. So it looks like we can get a few of these on here. We're going to trim up the positive because I want to get more on, see if I can pack a few images on here onto our frame, onto the screen. So I'm going to place this with the emulsion side facing the screen, okay? So it's kind of like, a good rule of thumb is emulsion to emulsion, or toner to emulsion, if you will. So you can trim these down a little bit. Because we end up masking them off anyways on the, so here I'm putting an emulsion side down, a little bit of space between them, sure. This one I won't bother trimming because it's already pretty much kind of cropped, all right? So we're going to put that right in the center. And now I'm going to take my screen and I'm actually just going to plop it right on top. This is going to be fine. Now I push it into contact with my images, and then I'm going to take this felt and I'm going to put the felt down. This provides some cushion to further press it into contact. And so the first thing you do is you put the positive on the glass facing inside so that the emulsion is touching the screen, and then I'm putting the screen on top, then I'm putting the felt down, and then I'm putting this piece of wood back on, and I'm closing it up with these really fancy hooks. Now I'm going to pick it up, and you'll be able to see that we can see the image. Oh, and I've got this one backwards, so you should be reading the other way. So I put that one in backwards. So I'm just going to open it back up and flip this around. Okay, so I had it in backwards, so it's very easy to reset. Just put this back in. Felt back on. This provides a little bit of cushion, so we get some good pressure. Then we put this here, and then we turn these guys back on. Now we should be able to see. It should be in reverse. Correct, it is. Okay. So now I'm going to bring this into the exposure area, and we're going to expose it. So here we have the screens with the images kind of loaded onto it. I'm going to put my frame down and slide it in here. Up here I have a 500 watt halogen bulb. I'm just going to kind of measure this so you can get a sense of the measurement, the distance. Because the distance from the bulb basically to the screen determines your timing. And so it is 40 centimeters from the screen, from light to the screen. So we're actually going to expose this for about 10 minutes, okay? And so I'm going to now turn the light on and set a timer for 10 minutes. And we wait 10 minutes, and what's going to happen here, or what's happening here, is that the halogen light is hardening the emulsion. And so the areas that are black, that have toner on them, are basically preventing the emulsion underneath from hardening, okay? And then the areas that are open, that don't have toner, are hardening around it. And so what happens is, after this has been exposed, we're going to take out the screen, we're going to soak it in some water, and the hardened areas are going to stay. The areas that are not hardened are actually going to wash away. So in this way, it's very direct in that the black line that you draw or that you print is not hardened, and it washes away, and that becomes the line that you print. More complicated way to say it, but that's basically how it works. So now it has been 10 minutes, and so we are going to turn off the light, and I'm actually going to, as you can see, I don't know if you can kind of see it, it's already kind of turned a darker purple. It's a little bit lighter over here because the intensity of the light is here. So I'm actually going to open it up here and take apart my exposure frame and actually take this entire thing out. Here's the screen, and I'm going to put it into a small bath over here of just water. Okay, so I have here a basin that just has water, nothing but water in it. And I'm going to put it in the basin, and I'm going to let it sit for 2 minutes. You can actually already see the image kind of forming here. And this bath is just going to soften
the emulsion so that it's easier to wash out. You don't need to do this, but it makes things a lot quicker. So we're going to wait about 2 minutes and then I'm going to show you the washout. Okay, for our washout we have basically some basins to collect the water, but also it's just a board with some window screen, and then I have a piece of Kalon, and then the board. This allows for kind of a smooth but porous surface to spray out the screen. And I've got clips to clip it on. So over here I'm going to grab the screen. You're going to be able to see the images that are already kind of forming. And hopefully this works. Here I'm going to clip these on. And now I'm going to take my hose and I want to have more of a spray like this. And I'm just going to spray over the surface. If I'm too aggressive with the spray, it'll actually wash out the image, like actually right there. So you can kind of see that it's washing away the black area and keeping the white area. This side is a little soft. It looks like we're going to have to shoot that one again. So this all looks pretty good, except for this area was too soft. You can kind of see here it started to wash away from your line drawing here. This is because it's further away from the light. So here we had the hardest, most direct exposure, and here it faded off. So actually I think we want to do more like 12 minutes. We need to increase the exposure, or we need to rotate that frame because here it washed out. So we have to redo this one. But I'll hold it up to the light for the camera so you can see it. But the area that was farther away washed out too much. So maybe, can you see it if I go like that? How's that? So you should be able to see right through the areas that you want printed, and you can see here that this washed out. Unless, was it supposed to, that's not supposed to be like that, is it? No. And so we need to reshoot that one. But the happy face is okay. It's kind of, if you want to continue to wash out an area, there you go. You can actually just really gently spray out. If you use too much pressure, it'll actually blast out the entire area. So that's pretty good. And then we're going to hang this to dry. We'll let it dry for about an hour, and then we'll put it back in the light to harden it further. Okay? So now that we have made our screen and we have hardened it, it has been ample amount of time for us to let the screens harden. So you can see it's almost like a dark purple compared to like the pinkish color of the emulsion. It is ready to use, and with this QTX emulsion, it's super durable. Once it's hardened, you could leave it in a bucket of water for days and it would not dissolve, it would not come apart. So QTX is really durable, and the longer you leave it in the sunlight, the darker it's going to get. Eventually it turns into a very dark purple, very, very dark. It's also extremely flexible, so it's not going to crack and it's not really going to fold. And so this is a really nice emulsion, the QTX. And we have some really nice screens here. So here's this one, the Coffee Wear, Budapest Dog, and then the nice line drawing that both of these Chenga made. So these are going to be really nice for us to use. So the first thing we want to do is pull our sheet of paper. So that's pretty standard. We're going to take our mold and decal, we're going to dip it into some water, pull it up, and we're going to shake it. And so here I've created like 4 loads of pulp using a big bathrobe that we found on the street. So it's kind of gray. It was pink, then it turned brown, now it's gray. So you pull a standard sheet of paper. We're going to let it drain. And then we're going to cooch it the same exact way that you normally do. So we're going to pass it off onto a felt. Slowly lowering the mold down, pushing down on the back ribs here, and then opening it like a book. So here our sheet of paper has transferred to our felts, and it is continuing to drain. So now I'm going to take my, my stencils, and I can put them wherever I want. You can work with them wet or dry. Here we've got them rinsing in a bucket of water. So here I just want to put the coffee ware maybe down here. I'm going to place it, and then you want to very gently push it into contact. It is a stencil, so you want to make sure that it is in contact with the surface that is below. If you put it down and there's bubbles or there's wrinkles and things, your image will not render correctly. So I'm just gently kind of pressing it into contact with our wet sheet of paper. And then here I've taken some Pellon or some interfacing and I've cut it into strips. And so here we're going to use this to mask off around the image. You don't necessarily need to use Pellon. You could use office paper and just cut it into strips and then put it down. The Pellon is something that we are able to reuse. And so you can see already the kind of dark color from the last time we used it. So it's nice to have a couple of strips of Pellon. Here you can kind of see around me are a bunch of spray bottles that have pulp in them. So this was a white cotton t-shirt that I ran through the Hollander beater for about 4 hours. And what happened was the pulp broke down and became super, super, super fine. It's very important that you do this. If you don't have a Hollander beater, this is not possible. You can order it from a paper maker. With a Rayna Hollander, it takes maybe 3 hours. With a Lee McDonald, it takes about 4. With a Valley, it probably takes 5 or 6. Those are the only machines that it works on. You really have to beat the fiber aggressively. And then, so it was a white cotton t-shirt, so what came out of the machine was all white. And then I just used pigments that are made for paper making and mixed them up in each of these spray bottles to get the different colors that we have. So now I have my stencil kind of set down. I've got it masked off, and I'm going to spray pretty liberally over the top of this image. And you can see the fiber go right into the screen. And what's happening is the force from the spray bottle is pushing the fiber through the screen, and it's grabbing onto the cellulose in the cotton sheet of paper, so it's hooking right onto it. And it's an inherent property of paper making that is adhering to the wet sheet of paper below. You can see here now it has spilled out and sprayed underneath, so this is a little bit of a watery solution. It's also picking up some of the dirty Pellon. So if you want to be cleaner about it, then you need to have clean Pellon. So then you kind of peel this off. I like to drip, helps break up the kind of messiness of it. And so there our image has transferred. So you can see very clearly it was a stencil print. We didn't run it through a press, we didn't do much other than spray the pulp through it. You can see some of the blushing, which is basically the pigment, is bleeding a little bit. It means that I need to add more retention agent or aluminium sulfate to basically get that to bond. So I'm going to try another one where it's with color. So here we have the faces. Is this the way it goes, or does it go the other way? Or does it matter? So here we can take our faces and place it right down, again onto our sheet of paper, pushing it into contact making sure that it has full contact with the wet sheet of paper. This does not work with dry paper. And so then we take our interfacing, we'll rinse it a little bit better this time so that we don't get so much of that detritus on there. Taking my interfacing and I'm masking off the edges here. If you want to, maybe I'll leave one edge open so you can see it. If you want more of a Banksy look, then you would just kind of leave it open. So in this case, I'm actually going to start with this kind of weird neon green and just spray over the top. So again, this is just pulp that's been, it's a cotton t-shirt that's been pulped, and then I've added pigment to it. We don't really need that, we're going to add blue. And so here's our blue, we'll go over the top, and it kind of mixes in the middle to make it green. Kind of maybe add some color to this just by spraying, but if you want, you can also spray over the top. The pulp printing is really kind of cool in that it's very immediate. So you can actually take an article of clothing that has some kind of personal significance. Maybe it was your grandma's nightie, and then you can take a photograph of your grandma and you can burn a screen of it of her, and then you could print it onto the paper that's made from clothing. So there you have it. And I like the grip. It's kind of good to go through some of that. And one of the advantages to pulp printing is that you can compose right on the screen. So if you would like to maybe put this text over here, you can move the screens around and then just kind of tinker around really to make compositions as you want. So almost like collage or copier art. You can also take the images and do different things with them, just put them in different spots, and maybe use different colors, and only spray parts of the image so that parts of the image show up. One of the cool things also is that you can kind of flip the image and you can print it either side. It doesn't really matter. Of course, if you're using text, you would probably rather have it read right, but maybe that's not your style. You can flip it so you can kind of go both ways. So I kind of like this, the pulp printing for that versatility and for that creative element where you can kind of build layers and build compositions right there. So for art making, it works really well. So when you're finished, we're going to take our interfacing and we're just going to flip it on top, and then we can start again. I would, if you're going to do a lot of pulp printing, you can see we are using, our interfacing has been used for pulp printing quite a bit, and so we have like a lot of shadows and stains and things from the past projects. These will not transfer to your sheet of paper, but it's good to use interfacing that you don't mind getting stained. You can kind of see the overspray here leaves a lot of mess on your interfacing. So don't use your really nice white interfacing for pulp printing. Use your kind of like dirty ones. And then continue on. So that's pulp printing.